We'll start you all off with a sunset this evening. The sunset was much nicer than the sunrise was. The sunrise was just a big ball of light, no pretty clouds, no texture, no nothing like that. And I was outside when the sun was setting, so I decided to get a picture of that, and here it is. But tonight I figured we'd talk about we'd talk. That's a funny expression. You're not talking, or at least I can't hear you if you are. It's a one-way conversation, kind of like when your significant other calls you at work and tells you when you get home, we're we're gonna have a conversation, they say, and you get home and sit there and get yelled at for 3 hours without getting a word in edgewise, and that's called a conversation. No, no, no. I'm sorry. I'm just single for a reason. Um, Several. Uh, so I was, thinking about what I could talk about tonight, and I decided the best thing to talk about would be, or at least a good thing, would be my job history. I'm not applying for anything, but it's a fun topic of conversation. So I sat down, I put the video together, I shortened it so you guys wouldn't have to watch me uh, do this in real time. You could watch it at 4 speed. You're welcome. And it's going to work out to be about a 17.5 minute video. And I've had 16 jobs. So unless I'm going to just list them off coldly, which obviously is not my style, um, I'm not going to get them all done in this video. Uh, but it's a good, you can't finish something until you start it, right? So we'll go through a couple here at least, and I'll do what it is I do. The first job I had was for the American National Volleyball Association, commonly referred to as the ANVA, and it was my job to get driven to a random neighborhood picked out by somebody in management, I'm sure, um, and try to sell tickets to women's volleyball. Now we'll get to that part in a couple minutes. I had the job for 3 days. It was not the worst job I had because it was only 3 days. It was certainly interesting. I have a couple significant memories. One of them was the vehicle we took to get to these different places that we went was an old 1960 something VW bus with no seats in the back. So it was a front seat and passenger seat, and then an empty cargo bay, I guess you'd call it, in the back of the van. I remember that the gentleman who owned this vehicle, for lack of a better term, his brakes didn't work, so he had to actually use the handbrake. He had to, gear down, and then use the handbrake for actual stopping. And I remember if he pulled the pulled the handbrake too hard, and the van stopped too hard, that the side door, and keep in mind there's 5 or 6 of us in the back of this van, that the side door would not stop as fast as the rest of the van and fly open. Um, so I learned real quickly not to sit by the door. Apparently everybody else knew that, and it was the initiation for the new guy, um, which was fun. I didn't actually fall out, but I had to grab on. One of those moments of wild arm flailing, trying to grab on anything to keep from moving out of falling out of a uh, potentially moving vehicle. Um, I think my other real pleasant memory, or my pleasant memory of that job was they had us in a neighborhood like the one I'd grown up in, um, and I'd knocked on yet another door, and this young lady, right about my age, in a little plaid skirt and a little white blouse, button up, answered the door, and although she couldn't buy tickets, she certainly didn't mind standing there and talking to me for, well, far longer than it should have been. In hindsight, I want to say it was about 45 minutes. I certainly enjoyed my time chatting with her. Um, at one point, she invited me in to get something to drink because, she realized how hot it must be me walking around the neighborhood and and doing my job, and the coward in me said no, and I wish at 16 that I could have better expressed the interest that I had, but I wasn't able to. So I just went ahead and went off to the next house and didn't sell any more tickets that night. Um, the deal with the company is that you had to make uh, 3 sales a night. That you had 3 days to make 3 sales, and then on your fourth day you had to make 3 sales a night, or else you were gone. That was the contract you signed. By the end of my third night, I had made 1 sale, and they let me go, and I wasn't, to be honest, all that bothered by it. Um, I went and looked for a new job. Found it at Square Chair Pizza. Not the real name, but you can figure it out. Um, and I was the food. I was one of the pizza makers, right? I stood there in the line. And I got the next tag, and I got the right size of dough. Or you sprinkle the cornmeal down on the tray first. You put the right dough on there. You put 7 ounces of cheese or whatever it was, or you put the sauce down, then the cheese down, then the toppings down, and it wasn't a bad job, really. It took me a couple days to get up to speed. A couple days to learn that 7 was pepperoni. The letter X meant they wanted extra cheese, which means they got 9 ounces instead of 7. The W meant with. That meant you got to put onions on it. Um, you know, and I talked about this job in one of my earlier videos. I mentioned this was when I broke my arm real bad, and stopped in to see the boss. This was the place I'd done it. Um, and when I got back from my broken arm, they had somehow decided that I would be more useful to them washing dishes um, than I would be pizza making, which kind of irritated me because I had gotten my best friend's girlfriend a job there, and she had taken my place as a pizza maker, and I was now the dishes guy. Um, Whatever. Got fired from that job for wanting a day off. And the way that worked was actually pretty funny. So most jobs, especially minimum wage starter jobs like that, they're going to need 2 weeks notice to give you a day off, right? And so on literally the first day of the month, I asked for the 12th and the 20th off. I asked for the 12th off because that was the day I wanted off for my own personal reasons, and I asked for the 20th off because that was my sister's wedding day. And they didn't give me the 12th off, and that was whatever. I decided to go into work on my birthday anyway. And they didn't give me the 20th off. And when the schedule came out, I went to the manager, Bernadette, I think her name was. I went to the manager and I said, I'm not going to be here Saturday, the 20th. It's my sister's wedding day, and I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be at my sister's wedding. And she looked at me and she said, well, you're on the schedule. And I said, yeah, I know. That's why I'm telling you. And I called her. I was supposed to be there at 5 or 6 in the evening, and called her at like noon, before everything really started going with my sister's, because we had it at the house, before everything started going up with my sister's wedding. And I told her I was going to be there, and she said, "You're fired." And I said, "Yeah, I figured I was." And you know, that was about it. Still a fine pizza, would still go in there and be a customer. Um, but whatever. Um, so I had to go look for another job, and so the next job I found was at the old BK. You know where I mean. And I was the broiler guy, which meant that I would, to use a phrase, I would go to the freezer and get the box. The way they have it set up there is they've got a big broiler machine which just runs some chains under some heat, and at one end you've got the fridge end where you put the frozen meat, and at the other end you catch the meat, put it in buns, and put it in a steam table, and then the hold the pickles people would take the burgers out of the steam table, and hold the pickles, hold the lettuce, whatever, and then you go eat it. Um, I have not eaten at a BK since I stopped working there nearly 1,000 years ago. Um, Everything, even if I went there. I went there one time and got just a Coke, and my mouth still felt greasy. Um, Maybe it was just in my head, but no. Um, Once in a while, I got to work the fry station. That was like a big step up for me. Um, I got fired from that job too. Do you see a pattern here? Um, we were at my dad's, and we decided to stay another week, and mom said that was fine, and my brother's girlfriend was like a junior manager there, and he called her to say that he was staying another week, and I mentioned that I'd be staying another week too. So if I was on next week's schedule, could they just give me another week off from the two I've already taken? And they said they'd rather just replace me, and I said that was fine. That didn't actually bother me a bit. By this point, I was out of high school and should have a real job anyway. So I got my first real job, and I got it at a place that I'm going to call East Lake Magnetics. And essentially what we did there, production, it wasn't a production job per se, but it certainly was a manufacturing job. Um, so in other words, the boss would walk up to you and hand you a spool of wires or a couple spools of wire and say, "Okay, we need this specific winding done." And you'd go to your winding machine and you'd take your X gauge wire, and you'd wrap it. You'd set it to this many inches wrap, and you'd wind it 42 times or 14 times, or whatever the instructions said, whatever whatever you're told to do. I remember I worked with such a thin gauge wire because obviously you had to strip the ends of the wire before you started wrapping it, um, winding it, so that you would have a contact place for later when they put it in the solenoid, or wherever they're putting it in, that you could make contact with. That's why I called it a contact place. And I worked with one wire that was so super thin that the insulator was so super thin that you could not strip it off with a pair of wire strippers, no matter how good your skills were. So you had to stick the ends in acetone and let it sit there for about 30 seconds while the acetone ate the insulation off, which was great. So you go grab a coffee cup and you put acetone in it. No, I've never drank acetone. You strip the wires in a cup of coffee. Well, the problem was, and this was a very um, homegrown, almost out of a garage kind of company. I mean, it wasn't a garage; it was an actual workplace in an office, and not an office environment, but in a what do you call it? Where they've got a bunch of businesses all together. Um, and so we didn't always have coffee cups. I mean, we always had styrofoam cups. And here's the fun part: did you know that acetone will eat right through the bottom of a styrofoam cup like the cup's not even there. See, I didn't find that out until, well, I got the job at Eastlake Magnetics. So that was fun. I spent, I wasted more than one or two styrofoam cups just watching it pour straight through. I didn't get fired from that job. I actually left it. I left it so that I could go to my next job. You know, the old Ashton Kutcher line. I was always looking for my next job while I was working my current one. Um, my next job was well, gosh, we've got about a minute and a half left. Maybe I'll just tease a little bit. My next job I held for 4 years. And part of that was because my best friend was also my boss. He was the guy in charge of hiring and firing. He was the guy in charge of scheduling. He was the guy who had to talk to management, so they called him manager. And it was at a private country club where I was in charge of keeping the golf carts. My official title was golf cart mechanic. I'm not sure I actually did any mechanics more than these were electric golf carts, more than keeping water in the batteries and keeping them clean as they came in and making sure there were enough to be put out. The always nine sitting in front of the shop, so that way the golf pros in the shop could sell the golf carts too. Uh, I've got a lot of stories about that job. Some good, some bad, some I won't tell in a public forum. And they'll all have to wait for another time because I can see by the clock on the wall that I'm just about out of time here. So thanks for listening. Thanks for letting me ramble. Who knew I could do 17 minutes on 3 jobs? Take care. Stay blessed. Oh, cool. Check it out. It looks like I've got about another extra 20 seconds left. So I'd just like to go ahead and remind you all that Bobby Darin's Mac the Knife is a thing that's out there all over the place and needs to be sung to. Anyway, again, take care. Stay blessed.